Well, what do we got going on here, kids? Well, we got a new radiator core support set up. Now we're just figuring out where we're gonna put how we're gonna mount the fenders. New inner fender wells because the other ones were junk and cut up, and this fender had to be massaged a bunch to fit the radius. And now with it sitting on here, it's pretty decent. So that's the new core support. Everything's going good. Got plenty of room. I ordered 4 8-inch electric fans. They'll stagger around that thing, 4 of them, but they each blow almost 2,500 CFM each. So 4 of those little 8-inch fans are gonna really cool this thing. This thing's awesome. So what it was, and I made a video on how to tell if your MSD box is junk, because the old one was. This is another old one, but this one works. So remember I said it was running and it died, and it was out of gas? It was out of gas, yes. I pulled a Jason at OCG on this. Whole car guy, I pulled a Jason. Not a big deal. Gas gauge showed half a tank empty. Below half is actually empty on this truck. So what happened was when the owner told me that this thing was having trouble running, it had a hard time starting, and it was coughing and farting and having all sorts of issues. And I got here and it was backfiring and doing all sorts of stuff, but it wasn't backfiring through the carbs. It was backfiring through the exhaust. Actually, it would shoot flame. It was just black smoke. So it was really rich at idle, like it wasn't burning. So I actually leaned it out all the way around, which didn't make any sense to me at the time because I already had this thing running perfectly. So I leaned out all 8 screws and got this thing. I took them actually a quarter turn each all the way in to get it where it's supposed to be. And it actually ran a lot better. And I took it around the blocks. You guys went with me on that ride around the block, and it seemed okay. Had a little bit of traction problems, not a big deal, but it just wasn't right, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I got back here, and I shut it off. And I went to start it again, nothing. It would crank and crank and crank, no spark. So I actually checked. I pulled the coil wire to see if there was spark, which is dangerous. Don't do that in an MSD box because if it is working, it's not just one spark every time that rotor comes around. It's like a bunch of them at once, and that'll zap you pretty good. You cannot use your test light to check power at the coil. You can verify you have power to the MSD box, at the fuse box, and make sure this red wire has it, and the small red wire has key on power. Make sure you have black ground at the black wire. And that's about it. If you have this special Msd Timing Light, you can hook it up to number 1 and crank it over, and if it flashes, that'll tell you actually have spark or not. If you're getting your signal and the box is trying to send it, which could help you diagnose a bad coil, blah, blah, blah. This thing had nothing. Stereotypically bad MSD box. And that's what they do. They start running bad, like a bad condenser in a set of points. They'll idle. They're hard to start. They'll idle. But you give them gas and they'll kind of buck and fart. If you clean up the carburetor and get it lean enough, it clears up the chambers and doesn't cause as much current to be drawn through the plugs. And it'll actually run. I know that sounds funny, but that's what they do. So driving this thing around, went on a test drive. That was all great. Everything was good. Shut off. Like I said, went to saw on it, nothing. Checked it, no spark. Let it cool off, went to fire it up, and it cranked and cranked and then fired. Coughed a little bit, and then it ran for a second, and then as soon as I shut it off, it had nothing again. But that time the coil was cold and the box was cold. So we put a new box on, that new box, and this thing starts like it did. One pump, boom, it's running. Like running dead cold, like the cold start video you guys saw. And it runs much, much better. So back to this. Front end's going on. We're building our front section for the grill, which this has a Lincoln grill in it, by the way. 41 Lincoln, mix of truck and, it's because the truck's had painted sides and this aluminum. It's long story short. So new core support, that's what's going on. Oh, and some more news. Yours truly will be on Live in the Mob. That's the channel. It's the Tri-5 Mob for you Tri-5 guys. They're having me as their, I guess, on their live show. The 3 of them are going to gang up on me. That's right. Which would be good. Should be fun. So that's sometime this afternoon, actually. I think about 2 or 3 o'clock my time. So it's 7 o'clock somewhere else. Anyway, going to be fun. Hope you guys can hang out and see it. If not, watch it later. Because they had John Chase on there 2 weeks ago. He's the guy with that 55 that raced. He works for Hoonigan. For those weirdos over there. And then they had pardon my French, they had the shit box of doom, which is that turquoise patinaed 57 wagon that ran drag week with the blown alcohol motor in it. They ran on gasoline. Yeah, crazy. They had that guy 2 weeks before that. The kid's 18 who has that car. Man, it was totally nuts. Anyway, I'm gonna have a good time. They don't know anything about me. I don't know anything about most of them, so it ought to be a pretty good interview. Yeah, that's where we are. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Aloha. Look at that. Isn't that cute? Gosh, I love blower stuff.